Joining us now, Congressman Republican from Virginia's 5th District, largest district in the entire Mid-Atlantic. I mean, it's bigger than New Jersey, sprawling district, Republican, Denver Riggleman. He's also a businessman, signs the front of paychecks. Denver, great to have you with us, man.
Hey, good morning. How are you, John?
So much to talk about, Denver, so little time. Let's get right into it. The Mueller press conference yesterday, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, he didn't say a whole lot different than when we read on the report. And by the way, I just want to let you know, John, I read the report. And, I find it interesting that people are, screaming, I guess on the far left again about impeachment talk again. And I find it interesting that we think that the same people who came up with the Green New Deal could somehow do better than what the FBI could do on their investigation, with the people and the staffers there. So I don't think there's a whole lot of worry, if it was me, about those type of individuals who would want to do that. But again, I think what we're looking at is that there was simply no conspiracy or collusion, and now we're looking at maybe obstruction. But I don't think we can try to adjudicate character, which is I think they're trying to do, whatever that arbitrary definition is. And so for me yesterday, he just reiterated the same thing he said in the report, and I guess we need to move on as a country and get some things done. That's what I think about it.
Well, it's what you just said. I think you nailed it. You said they're trying to adjudicate character, right? Like they don't like some of the things he said or did, therefore they want to make that part of the justice system, right? I mean, if you don't like the guy, don't vote for him in 2020. What does it have to do with the Department of Justice?
It does, and after 2 years of an FBI investigation, and the fact is, here's the other thing, and I find it odd that he switched the words, Mueller, because I've read it and I've heard him in the past. The thing is, they found no credible evidence to support collusion or obstruction either. So there is a threshold of proof. You can't, even if it is, a character issue and they think it is, again, you can't adjudicate that. You can't legislate that. I mean, I guess, for me, maybe it's the fact that they're just out of ideas. Maybe it's, when they're talking, Medicare for all or Green New Deal, or Bernie Sanders is talking about the workers owning the meat of production, which is pure socialism, one of communism. Maybe it's the fact they're so defunct on ideas that they think character is something they can actually legislate. And I guess, with real-world Republicans like myself, people with common sense, business, and military intelligence, it seems to me that they become a clickbait Congress, right? They're just looking for the Twitter headline, not actually looking at what's going on and not helping their districts. So if we look at this soberly, I think we have a Democratic Party that's out of control and really has nothing to run on at this point. And if you look at unemployment, you look at jobs created, you look at what's going on in the economy, you look at how we're doing, we look at what's happening with Mexico and Canada, with the lifting of tariffs. I don't know, John. I just think they're to a point that they've sort of lost the bubble, and they're still angry about 2016, and I think that's what we're looking at right now.
There were several Democrats that got elected in House districts that President Trump carried in 2016 that got elected on a platform of working to find solutions to get America moving forward. Two of them are your colleagues right now. Elaine Luria, second. Abigail Spanberger, seventh. Right now, if they keep this up, neither of them is going to get reelected. I mean, it's going to take a really bad Republican candidate to lose those districts. I mean, if you're them, you campaigned on getting something done. They're getting nothing done because all they're talking about is impeachment, of investigations, collusion, obstruction. Nothing gets done. They had a chance to do infrastructure. Instead, Nancy Pelosi decided to launch a broadside on the president before she went to the meeting, which obviously was designed to derail the meeting. So how are they going to explain this?
I don't know. Because, if I'm talking to them, I was watching. Yeah, don't call me a nerd, John, because sometimes I watch C-SPAN, even though I'm on it sometimes, right? So I'm watching this, this public policy debate with John Podesta, Alyssa Slotkin, and Abigail Spanberger, and they're talking about Iran. And I almost laughed out loud when a couple of them said, listen, it was so much better with Iran in 2016 when they took our sailors because we had an open line of communication. Think about what I'm saying here. And why are we doing this? Because Iran doesn't know what we're doing. Well, that's the frickin' point, of military action, is to keep people on their heels. And that's the point of political action, is to keep people on their heels. We don't want Iran to know what we're doing. And by the way, in 2016, when John Kerry called the Iranians, when they took our sailors, they used all that. They actually violated the Geneva Convention and used our pictures, right, as propaganda of our sailors kneeling with their hands over their head, and we did nothing about it. So I would rather stay in a position of strength than a position of vacillating weakness where we roll over and show our belly to anybody who we think might be mad at us. So I think what we have is they're just having a tough time explaining away common sense things, and I think they're going to have a real tough time.
Where do we go with Iran right here? If you're advising the president on the Iranian situation, what would it be?
Keep it up. I mean, right now what we're looking at is that Iran, they don't know what to do. They don't know our next moves, and that puts us in a position of strength. But now that we've showed our position of strength, and we talked about shape and deter last time, I think at this point we now reach out and say, listen, we have proof on state-sponsored terrorism. We know what you're doing in multiple countries, right? All this stuff has to stop. If you can do that, we might be able to come to agreement, but you always negotiate from a position of strength. Once you actually show that strength, then you go in and say, hey, you can compromise with integrity at that time. Say, listen, again, enough is enough, right? Enough is enough. Get out of Yemen. Get out of all these other areas. Stop with state-sponsored terrorism. Stop your actions with Hezbollah. Stop the things that you're doing, and maybe we can talk. But until that point, I think we continue to show strength.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Denver Riggleman, Republican Congressman, 5th District, Virginia. That's the south side of Virginia, stretching really from Lynchburg to Danville. A lot of points in between there. Denver, let's get to stay in the Middle East for a second. And we're going to be looking, oddly enough, never happened before, another Israeli election within a one-year period called for September. Their government collapsed. They can't work with each other, so they have to call another snap election. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's historic. I mean, and I find it interesting that they couldn't put a coalition together. But I think it shows what's going on in Israel, too, right? He might not be able to put a coalition because they don't think they're reacting strong enough to the issues on the border, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah. We don't know exactly all the issues that are going on in Israel, but I find it interesting that they had to call another election because they couldn't put a majority together. It is historic. I think, golly day, I think all of us, even in the intelligence community, are scratching our head, like what's going to happen next there. And to think that all of us know what's going on internally in Israel would be, a fool's errand because we don't. So I think right now it's a wait and see. Let's see what happens in this next election round. If they still can't form a majority, I think that's when it's going to get very interesting.
Denver, the president just moments ago in his gaggle saying that in a day or two he was going to come out with a major announcement on immigration at the border, that he had a major announcement to make that he said was going to knock your socks off. I'm paraphrasing because it was just moments ago here at the White House. The president's saying this. I've seen you at the White House now several times. You get invited to some of their big events, so I know that you're on the president's radar screen and you get to talk to the White House. The president, moments ago in a press gaggle at the White House before he got on Marine One to go to Colorado Springs for the given the commencement address to the Air Force Academy, said in the next day or so he was going to come out with a major announcement about the border and immigration, and it was going to be in a day or two, and he said it was going to be a really big announcement, and it's going to shock you. And I was wondering if you had heard anything about that or you know anything about it.
Well, that one I don't. I heard at the same time. I mean, I just heard it now from you. I was, during my workout this morning, so just heard at the same time that you did. My guess is I will be probably getting an email here soon explaining what that might be. But my guess is that I would hope that they're going to flesh out the plan that he talked about in the Rose Garden based on, what we can do, exactly what the specifics and the particulars are. And it could be that we're actually finally going to see that, which I'm happy to see.
Now, the president has engaged you, and I don't know if you heard this when I said earlier, you were at that Rose Garden ceremony press conference a few weeks ago. So the president has engaged you as part of, obviously, his advisory team in Congress on what to do in the border. What has been some of your advice to the president on this and to his staff?
Oh, goodness gracious. Advice to the president on this, I think, I don't know if I would dare give advice to the president on this, specifically. John, that's a great thing, and part of the issue that we're having, as we go forward, is that there's so many moving parts right now, even in Congress and with all the different things that we're dealing with. We're trying to actually accept this barrage of things that are coming at us day after day, John, and a lot of that is Democrat-induced. But again, I honestly, I'm in a wait-and-see mode on all of this. I'm not quite sure, at this point, how fast this information is going to come to us, what their strategy is specifically, because I think on their own, and I'll tell you this, I think the president is actually purposely keeping some things back until he releases it. And I just don't think I would give the president any information or any advice on this at this point.
Let's get to the fact that you just passed a bill out of committee expanding access to capital for Rural Job Creators Act, passed unanimously through the House Financial Service Committee. Denver, your first one. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, I've had a couple. There's been 3 that went through the committee, but 1 got to the floor. So one of those was my Rural Housing Act, where it would make it easier for people to access funds without having to go through all the regulatory structures of a bank. The one I just passed, which I'm really proud about, is transparency and sanctions, where the Department of Treasury has to report to Congress on foreign banks and subsidiaries banking sanctioned organizations, individuals, or states. So, which allows Congress more transparency to go after these individuals, organizations, and states that are nefarious, that are bad actors towards the United States. My other bills I'm very proud of, the rural housing, also the one that I just put in, which would actually allow for easier access to money for BBB bonded municipalities to do infrastructure growth. So I'm working really hard, John, and a lot of it's very technical and specific because I'm in the minority and I need to work across the aisle. So I got to do things that have bipartisan support and also match, our conservative principles and, get the type of support that we need to grow the economy in rural areas. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but we're going to keep moving forward. But I'm really proud of what we've been able to put through and the work that my staff has done on this also in coordinating this with the Democratic side.
Denver Riggleman, in this highly charged political partisan environment, you talk about working across the aisle. You're a freshman. So you look at some of the bills now, that the one that you got to the floor and others are making its way there. You have to work in the minority with your majority colleagues. Can you give us an example of somebody that you were on the Democratic side that you were actually able to have good conversations with, get them to help you and move some of these forward that are just in the best interest of people living in these areas? Can you just kind of walk us through that? Do you mind?
Well, goodness. Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. I mean, there is a bipartisan addiction working group that I'm really heavily involved in. So somebody like David Trone from Maryland, right? Very astute business mind, further left than me on some issues for sure. He ran as a Democrat, but a common sense Democrat. And so there's people like that over there. And I think, and that's what I've been trying to tell people when I'm talking to them, John, is that we can be a little bit worried, but I don't think you have to be worried to the point that you think our country's going down the tube. There are still common sense people that we can deal with. And I would say again, and I've said this before, there's a group of 30 to 40 moderate Democrats that I don't think would ever roll on the impeachment side. And I just think they think it's ridiculous because nothing is getting done. For instance, why is the USMCA not on the floor, John? I mean, and we have bipartisan support. We know it's going to pass the Senate and the House, but we don't, the Democrats don't want a victory. The leadership doesn't want a victory for President Trump. And we have Democrats all the time saying we need to get the USMCA on the floor, especially in rural districts, even here in Virginia. So there are people over there, people such as David Trone that we can work with, and Colin Peterson. There's definitely people over there that we can work with on the Democratic side. The issue that we have is that the Justice Democrats and the New Left has used Twitter and Facebook to take over the party, and that's what we see right now.
So, look, you're right. I mean, basically what you're saying here, you look at USMCA, and it replaced NAFTA. It's a great deal, much better than NAFTA was. So all these Democrats complained about the president canceling NAFTA. Then he replaces it with a much better deal for U.S. citizens, farmers, and people than NAFTA was. Much better deal. Not perfect deal, right? But as always, I always say, Denver, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the really good. Okay, it's a good deal. It's better for workers in Mexico, better for us, better for manufacturers. So the same Democrats who went ballistic over he was challenging his allies and Trudeau was mad at him and all that, now they have a better deal on the table and they won't even bring it to the floor because they don't want to give the president a victory. Is this a victory for the president or is this a victory for the American people? What are they talking about?
They don't know the difference. I mean, that's what should scare some people is the Democrats don't know the difference. And I find it insane. Listen, if USMCA passes in rural districts for Democrats that were in Trump districts, they're going to do well. They're going to do very well. And if you think about our district with dairy, I got dairy all over my district. We have timber, we have tobacco. Obviously we have massive agricultural industry here. So, I'm 65% rural, John, right? And my district's massive. Mm-hmm. The USMCA would be an amazing thing for us based on what Canada's agreed to on the dairy side with their classes of milk. It would be incredible on timber. It would be incredible on just about anything you can think about. We have the compare and contrast from NAFTA, and the compare and contrast is insanely good. So maybe it's because I haven't been in politics my entire life. Maybe it's because I see career politicians playing politics with people's livelihoods, trying to pass social justice bills with poison pills rather than real legislation. And again, it goes all back full circle, right, John? The reason we have this emotional hyperbole and this inability to look past certain things to get things done is because they're looking at 2020. And I believe some of them think impeachment. I think some of them think this emotional screaming is actually something to run on. And if that's the case, we get what we vote for. And if that's what people want, that's what they're going to get. I would say, hopefully, there's people like myself that are continuing in the line of just trying to get things done for their district and ignoring the hyperbole. But at some point, it's going to bite us all, right? If we don't have common sense people get out to the voting booth and we don't have common sense candidates running for office.
The fact that they can't get the USMCA to the floor is despicable to me, and it's just being held up for partisan political reasons, not because they're not going to vote for it. They're going to vote for it because this is what they said they wanted. I mean, I don't know how many times that Nancy Pelosi in the past has said, here's a direct quote from her. She said she's for trade deals that make a bigger paycheck for the American worker. Well, this is what USMCA does, and they won't bring it to the floor for strictly partisan reasons. So U.S. farmers and others suffer because they don't want to give the president a victory going into 2020. So they're going to hurt people for political reasons. And somehow they think that's a platform to win on. I mean, insanity is now taking that place over, man. It really has.
Well, it is. And, you see all these opinions, and I think we are down to the point, John, it's sad. I think we have a clickbait Congress, right? It's not about the actual substance of what we're trying to do. It's everybody going for a cheap headline on social media or newspapers. It's twisting words around to get a desired effect where the words of the article or even the bills in Congress don't match the text. They're running it through social media, and they're running it through really the people that are the loudest are on social media. Loud and stupid correlate. And I think that's what we have right now is that I scratch my head. Again, the people that have formulated the Green New Deal or Medicare for all or workers owning the means of production are the ones that are going to do a better investigation than the FBI. Maybe President Trump wants it. Maybe he wants to open the whole aperture, look at FISA, look at what President Obama's campaign or team was involved with, look at what Clinton's team was involved with, do a follow the money investigation on specifically what went on with the dossier, with the FISA process specifically. Wow. So maybe the Democrats are going to get what they wish for, and it might be the worst thing they could ever wish for.
My mother always said, Denver, be careful what you wish for. It may happen. John Fredericks Radio Network, we got to roll.